I've always been the disgrace of my family. That cousin who never shined at family lunches. The one who never had a real job, no rich boyfriend, no fancy trips to post on social media. While my cousins flaunted designer bags and the guys bragged about annual bonuses at startups, I was always the one who was still trying. No matter how much I studied, how hard I worked, how many nights I spent trying to build something of my own, deep down in their eyes, I was just the quiet embarrassment, the one who didn't make it. That's why that year I wasn't invited to the annual Hayes family lunch. My name is Tiffany Hayes. I'm 28 years old. And that exclusion changed everything. It was a cold November afternoon when it all became clear. I was sitting at the table in my tiny studio apartment, trying to review a paid traffic budget for a client who hadn't even paid for the previous project, when my phone buzzed. It was my mom. The caller photo was old, from some random lunch where everyone was smiling, except me, cropped out of the frame. Ironic. I answered hesitantly. "Hello, Tiffany," she said, in that tone she used when trying to sound neutral, but always came off as tired. The classic, "How are you?" The question no one in my family ever really cared about. Just social preamble, like silverware before the main course. "I'm alive. What is it?" I replied bluntly. She took half a second too long to respond, and I knew. In that silence, something had already died. "Look, I just called to let you know the family lunch will be on the 23rd this year." Aunt Lorna decided to move it up. I balanced the phone between my shoulder and ear, trying to free my hands while closing my laptop. The sound of the screen snapping shut seemed way too loud. "All right," I said dryly. More silence. Then, the blow. "They thought it'd be best not to invite you this year." She didn't apologize, didn't say, "I'm sorry," just threw the sentence out there like tossing scraps into the trash, and waited for me to accept it. "They who?" I asked, knowing the answer didn't matter. "Everyone, honey. It's nothing personal. It's just that things are different now." Melissa's bringing Andrew, her lawyer fiancé, remember? And Brandon just signed a contract in the US. There will be important people there. They just want to keep a more aligned atmosphere. More aligned. I wanted to laugh, but I couldn't. "So that's it? I was cut from the list because I don't fit the atmosphere?" I spat, my voice a little higher than I wanted. She hesitated. "They think you might feel uncomfortable. You never seem very at ease." I laughed, not loudly, a small, bitter laugh. It was absurd. "They didn't invite me because I'd make the others uncomfortable, Mom. Don't sugarcoat it." There was silence on the other end. She didn't deny it. That hurt more than any direct insult. That silent, resigned acceptance. As if I really didn't belong anymore. "You do know you weren't invited, right?" she said, more as a statement than a question, a sentence devoid of emotion, of any motherly warmth. That's when I knew. Something inside me broke. Or maybe it was freed. Hard to say. I took a deep breath and answered, with a calm that surprised even me. "I know, but I'm going to show up, and not in the way they expect." My mom didn't respond. Maybe she thought it was a tantrum. Maybe she knew it wasn't. I hung up and stood there, staring into nothing. The hum of the fridge in the background, the smell of stale coffee in a forgotten cup. Everything felt still. So did I. On the outside. Inside, something was roaring, a new, unfamiliar rage. But it wasn't wild or reckless. It was cold, sharp, a blade about to cut loose. I spent the following days on autopilot, but every night when the city slept, I stayed awake. The rage wouldn't let me sleep. It pushed me, made me dig through entrepreneurship forums, copywriting videos, organic traffic tutorials. I started studying like a fanatic. On a Saturday at dawn, I opened a blank file on my computer. It was time to start over. A new brand, a new positioning. My old business had shown signs of life, but it was too small. Now I wanted an empire. I don't want them to see the effort. I want them to see the success. And that's when the idea was born. A digital product for women like me, tired of being underestimated. I started with a small course, then an ebook. I launched a YouTube channel, a TikTok profile under a pseudonym, a bolder, fearless persona. And to my surprise, it went viral. In 3 weeks, I made my first sale. In a month, I hit $5,000. And most importantly, no one knew. Not my mom, not Aunt Lorna, not cousin Melissa with her lawyer fiancé. On the surface, I was still the same unglamorous Tiffany. My Instagram only showed book photos and motivational quotes. Nothing updated on LinkedIn. I kept up the act. It was part of the plan. I wanted them to think I was still at rock bottom. Still the failure, the burden, the invisible cousin. But inside, I was becoming something bigger. With every sale, a scar healed. With every message from a student saying, "This changed my life," I remembered my mom's voice saying, "You know you weren't invited, right?" Yes, I knew. I knew exactly what I was to them, and I also knew what I was about to become. One night, while watching my account balance pass $40,000 for the month, I looked in the mirror and said out loud, "They won't know what hit them." The next morning, when I opened my email, I saw an accidental message from Aunt Lorna. It was from the family group. The subject? Lunch menu review. In the middle of the thread, a gem. "Let's not tell Tiffany. She never fit in anyway. And honestly, we don't need negative energy this year." Negative energy. That's how they summed me up. I calmly closed my laptop, looked around my small apartment, and smiled for the first time in days. Not out of nerves, not from irony. A real smile. From someone who knows exactly what's coming. They wanted distance? They'd regret every step. The anger and sadness began to morph into something else. Something darker, more powerful. And inside me, an idea started to take shape. Revenge. I started working relentlessly. Not like someone in a rush, but like someone who was thirsty. A hunger that wouldn't quiet down, that didn't sleep. I woke up early and went to bed late, even without clients, without results, without anyone cheering me on. It was just me, my faith stained with doubt, and a laptop that made strange noises whenever I opened more than 2 tabs at once. At first, it was almost comical. My first digital product was a personal organization guide for overwhelmed women. Nothing revolutionary, I know. A well-designed PDF with checklists, practical tips, motivational quotes. I sold it for $10. Not even my mom would have bought it if I offered. But I believed. I posted it in a Facebook group with just over 1,000 members. I spoke about it like it was the salvation of women's productivity. And I waited. Nothing. 2 days passed. 3. On the 4th day, a notification on my phone woke me up. It was the middle of the night. My eyes were still glued shut with sleep when I read, "Sale confirmed, $10. I just sat there staring at the phone like it was playing a trick on me. I hit refresh. The sale was still there. Real. Concrete. I sat on the edge of the bed, my feet touching the cold floor, and started to laugh. Softly, afraid to wake the neighbors. I laughed and cried at the same time. "One sale," I whispered to myself. Just one, but it was mine. That was it. The first sliver of light through a door I thought was locked. Little by little, I improved the product. I redid the cover, rewrote sections, added bonuses. I started to understand how to run ads, how to write captions that grabbed attention, how to build a funnel, even if it was clumsy, even if it was all manual. I did everything by sheer will. I woke up every day to an alarm I called hope. No breakfast, no breaks. Just me and that mantra repeated endlessly. One sale at a time. And when one came, each sale felt like a prize. As if someone was saying, "You're alive, Tiffany." And that was enough. There were nights I nearly gave up. Once, after 2 full days working on a promo video, with script, editing, voiceover recorded on my old headphones, I posted it and got 14 views. No likes, no comments, and no sales. I lay down on the couch, covered my face with a pillow, and screamed. A muffled scream, the kind not meant to draw attention, just to release the pain stuck in your chest. I wanted to disappear, vanish from the world, be invisible again, but without hope this time. And then my phone vibrated. New message. A woman on focus. Hi, Tiffany. I bought your guide last week. Just wanted to say that, for the first time in years, I managed to organize my routine with my kids. I slept peacefully last night. That's priceless. Thank you. I cried like a child. There, in the middle of what looked like failure, a random stranger from somewhere in the US had reached out her hand. With those words, she gave me back the ground beneath me. She reminded me why I had started. The next day, I rewrote everything. I redesigned the layout, re-recorded videos, reconfigured ads. I studied like a maniac. Hours and hours of YouTube videos on copywriting, traffic strategies, storytelling. All free, of course. I didn't have a penny to spare. But my will was expensive. And the most curious part? No one knew. My family thought I had gone off the grid, drifted away. They probably gossiped among themselves that I had given up on myself. My mother, even when she called, rarely asked what I was doing. "Are you eating properly?" was the most frequent question. "I am, Mom," I'd reply. "Still trying those internet things, right?" Those things. As if it were a hobby. A ridiculous pastime. As if there wasn't sweat involved. As if I wasn't giving everything I had. But I didn't correct her, didn't explain. I let them think whatever they wanted. On social media, no sign of progress. No screenshots of sales, no grateful to the universe. Just silence. A deliberate, meticulously maintained silence. I wanted them to keep thinking I was still in the same place. Because the surprise would be the sweetest part. I became a kind of secret agent in my own life. Between one generic post and another, I was building little niche empires. A course here, an ebook there. I learned about affiliate marketing, SEO, how to build an audience without showing my face. It was a psychological game, and I was winning, even with very little. In a few months, I started seeing profits grow. Small, yes, but steady. $150 turned into $300, then $500, $1,000. I logged everything in a spreadsheet, line by line. Every cent had its place, and every amount was like a scar I kissed. The most ironic part? I still lived in the same tiny studio, still took the subway, still wore old clothes. On the outside, nothing had changed. But inside, I was becoming someone else, stronger, more confident, more dangerous. I started looking in the mirror each morning and seeing something different, a spark, a new light in my eyes. "It's going to happen," I said. "They have no idea, but it's going to happen." And every time my family posted a photo of sunny brunches, rooftop toasts, or holiday poses by glittering Christmas trees, it just fueled my fire. Because I knew what no one else did. That while they lived for appearances, I was becoming real. Authentic, unshakable. Revenge wouldn't come in the form of a scream. It would come in silence. It would come in presence. And then something unexpected happened. One day I got a message on Instagram from a cousin, Amanda. We weren't close, but she was always the least arrogant of the family. "Hey, stranger, how are you? We hardly talk. Hope you're doing well. Melissa's getting married next year, did you hear? Oh, and Aunt Lorna asked about you at the last dinner. Said she missed you." I smiled. "Missed the family disgrace?" I muttered, sarcastically. But something about that message set off an internal alert. It was too soon to raise any suspicions. So I replied carefully. "Hey, Mandy, I'm doing well. Super busy, as always. Glad to know you guys thought of me. Hugs. Simple. Empty. Safe." Each day, I gained more clarity. And one certainty was etched in me like a tattoo. I was in control. For the first time in my life, I was writing the script. No one could knock me off my path now. They thought I was still the lost Tiffany. They had no idea. The new Tiffany was just waiting for the right moment to show up. And when that happened, absolutely no one would forget. The months passed like a blur of work, learning, and overcoming. Sometimes I could barely tell what day it was. Mornings blurred into nights, and my routine consisted of answering emails, testing new ads, creating content, reviewing reports, taking care of clients, and just continuing, always continuing. But then, without warning, something changed. I started to realize that instead of struggling to make $50, I was now selling effortlessly. Traffic was increasing. Conversion rates were doubling. I had to, for the first time, ask for help. I hired a virtual assistant named Chloe. Young, smart, with a keen eye that spotted details I had been overlooking. "Tiffany, did you notice that your cost per acquisition has halved this month?" she told me one morning during a video call. "Really? How?" "Your audience trusts you. Your texts, they read like letters. It's different. People feel like you understand them. That's gold." I sat in silence for a moment, absorbing those words. Someone had just told me I was good. And it wasn't someone from my family trying to be polite. It was a professional recognizing my work. That month, my income surpassed $50,000. I sat in the chair in front of the dashboard with colorful graphs and flashing numbers and couldn't hold back the tears. 50,000 per month. I, Tiffany Hayes, the family failure. The one who was never invited to dinners, who didn't even deserve a seat at the Christmas table. The one who heard her own mother say on the phone, "She's trying some things online. You know how it is." Yeah, I knew exactly how it was. But now I also knew what it was like to win. I wasn't content. It wasn't time to celebrate. Not yet. I took part of the profit and invested heavily in marketing, paid traffic, strategic partnerships, a new website, clean visuals, professional design, planned launches weeks in advance. I hired an agency to handle email campaigns. My contact list, which once fit in a screenshot, now barely fit in a 1,000-line spreadsheet. And then, something unbelievable happened. I hit $100,000 in monthly revenue. 100,000, 3 zeros, per month. I was in shock. Not because I doubted myself, but because that feeling of power, control, achievement was completely new and delicious. "Did you notice?" Chloe wrote me in a message full of emojis. "You're a company now, not just a woman trying. You are." And she was right. My routine changed. I started waking up at 7 a.m., having coffee leisurely, meditating, reading. I hired a personal branding consultant, a business coach, and a specialized accountant. Everything structured, like my rich cousins' businesses. The ones who, at 19, got MBAs from their parents as birthday presents. But I didn't tell anyone. On social media? Silence. My personal Instagram still showed the same Tiffany from 2 years ago. A picture on the beach with a book. An old story about a salad. Nothing special. No signs of luxury, growth, or achievement. It was strategic. I wanted them to keep thinking I was the same. The aimless one. The one who was trying internet things. The invisible one. And the more they forgot about me, the stronger I became. Because deep down, I knew. When the curtain fell, the impact would be total. That image kept me firm. Everyone gathered, glasses in hand, fake laughs, pitying looks when my name was mentioned. And then I'd arrive, changed, unmistakable, unstoppable. But the hardest part wasn't winning. It was waiting. There were nights I found myself standing in front of the mirror, rehearsing the scene. "Surprise, cousins," I'd say, smiling with sarcasm. "Remember me?" Other times, I considered sending a screenshot of my dashboard to the family group with a short caption, "How long would I be a failure?" But no, that would be small. Base. I didn't want to prove anything. I wanted to make an impact, leave a mark. And it was at this point that a twist appeared. One day, I received an unexpected message. From Aunt Lorna, subject, family gathering. "Dear Tiffany, we're organizing our traditional Thanksgiving lunch. I know things have been a bit distant lately, but we'd really miss you. Amanda and Melissa asked about you the other day. I hope you can come. Warm regards, Aunt Lorna." My blood ran cold. Is this it? After 2 years of being ignored, 2 holidays without an invitation, 2 Christmases absent, and now a polite email? I stared at the screen for minutes. "Is this a trap?" I said out loud. It wasn't. It was worse. It was an attempt to pull me back before I made my appearance on my own terms. They must have heard something. A hint had leaked. Maybe an acquaintance commented. Maybe one of my videos appeared in someone's feed. Apparently, rumors were circulating. I smiled. That only proved my time was coming, but it wouldn't be on their time. It would be on mine. I could have responded coldly. I could have accepted right away, already preparing for the moment of impact. But no. Something inside me said it wasn't time yet. The climax needed to be bigger. It needed more time. More strength. So, I just visualized. I imagined myself arriving in my red Ferrari, already ordered, waiting for the right model. An elegant but discreet dress, straight posture, a direct gaze, not a single word of anger. And they, breathless. "Tiffany, is that you?" "Yes," I would reply. "I've changed. While you ignored me, I was changing." Suspense was my ally now, and in this game, time was my weapon. The Tiffany Hayes they rejected no longer existed. The one who was coming would make history. And when the moment came, nothing, absolutely nothing, would prepare them for what they would see. It was 2 long years, 2 years of sepulchral silence, of avoided glances on social media, of family gatherings that happened without even a message for me. The photos were popping up on Instagram. Laughter, toasts, elaborate dishes, lit fireplaces, expensive coats. The caption was always the same. Nothing like being with those we love. But I wasn't there. They made that very clear. And even with all the success I had accumulated, even with profits soaring, there was a part of me, the most hidden, the most human, that still bled. That 8-year-old girl who loved Aunt Lorna's parties, who spent the afternoon helping set up the Christmas tree while eating butter cookies. That girl who believed family was a shelter, not judgment. But this pain, it no longer dominated me. Now it was fuel, because something inside me had changed radically. I had discovered what I was made of. I had tasted the power of independence, the power of having succeeded without support, without patronage, without inheritance, without the rich uncle's angel investment. Just me, my ideas, my choices, my scars. And it was on a cold November morning, while drinking a black coffee as bitter as the winter outside, that I decided. "It's time," I whispered. The final blow, the unexpected appearance. The definitive breaking of the image they had created of me. I didn't want revenge in the classic sense. I wanted impact. I wanted presence. I opened my laptop and went to the Ferrari website. Red. There was no other possible color. If I was going to show up, I was going to do it like a comet. Radiant, ruthless, impossible to ignore. I closed the deal with a smile on my lips. The salesman, a distinguished gentleman named Patrick, seemed more excited than I was. "This model is rare, Miss Hayes. It will attract attention." "That's exactly what I want, Patrick. I don't want anyone pretending they didn't see me." In the following days, I barely slept. Not from anxiety, but from anticipation. The kind of adrenaline that only comes when you know you're about to turn the key to something big. I prepared everything calmly. I chose the right dress. Dark red, discreet, and elegant, nothing over the top. A heel that exuded confidence without seeming like I was trying to prove something. Light makeup, hair tied back. I wanted the focus to be my gaze. Firm. Resolute. When the morning of the year-end meeting came, the sky was clear. The frozen city seemed suspended in time, as if waiting for some revelation. I drove through the residential streets of the suburb as if I were on a runway. The houses with Christmas lights blinking, children running on the sidewalks. But nothing distracted me from my focus. When I turned the last corner and saw Aunt Lorna's house in the distance, my heart raced. In front of the house were all the usual cars, pretentious SUVs, luxury sedans, nothing unexpected. But then, my Ferrari. The roar of the engine echoed through the neighborhood as I parked right in front of the garage. A few people on the sidewalk stopped to look. The door of the house was slightly ajar. Someone was peeking. I got out of the car slowly, adjusted my coat, walked up to the door without rushing. Every step was rehearsed, every second a weight that accumulated in the air. And then, the door opened wide. It was Amanda who saw me first. My God! Tiffany? Behind her, the looks began to appear, one by one, like heads peeking through cracks. Is it Tiffany? Someone whispered. Is that hers? But how? I pretended not to hear, pretended not to notice the wide eyes, the slightly open mouths. But inside, I was feeding off every reaction. Merry Christmas, I said, smiling calmly. The silence lasted longer than would be socially acceptable. Melissa, with a glass of wine in her hand, was the first to try to make small talk. Wow, you look different. Yeah, I changed a few things, I replied. My tone was sweet, but there was ice there. Intentional ice. Aunt Lorna appeared then, adjusting her wool sweater. Tiffany, dear, what a nice surprise. I thought you weren't coming anymore. I thought so too, Aunt. But this year, I felt it was time. The room fell silent again. The smell of cinnamon and roasted turkey filled the air, but no one seemed to remember the dinner anymore. It was then that my father, who hadn't seen me in over a year, approached with slow steps. That car? Is it yours? Yes. But are you still doing those online things? The laugh escaped before I could stop it. Those things turned into a business. A successful one, actually. A new silence, heavier. Amanda broke the tension with a nearly childlike question. Are you rich? I looked around. The stares were consuming me. Let's just say I'm comfortable, independent, fulfilled. It was at that moment that the smiles changed, from discomfort to an attempt at friendliness. And the questions started coming, like an avalanche disguised as interest. You should talk about this on social media. We should hang out more. We should have coffee sometime. And then something inside me snapped. I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and said firmly, I'm not here to show off wealth. I'm here because for a long time you looked at me like I was a mistake, a failure, like my life choices were something to be ashamed of. Their faces turned pale. No one moved. I spent 2 years alone. 2 Christmases without an invitation. 2 gatherings where my name was forgotten. And now that I show up with an expensive car, you remember me? Tiffany, it's not like that, Aunt Lorna began. It's exactly like that, Aunt. But it's fine, really. I just wanted you to see, not for me, but because the girl you called aimless built something no one here could have imagined. And she did it alone, without a penny of inheritance, without family networking, just with courage. I stared at them, one by one. Some averted their gaze. Others looked like they were about to cry. But don't worry, I'm not here to stay. I just stopped by to wish a Merry Christmas. I turned, walked toward the door. Before leaving, I heard my mother murmur, I'm sorry, daughter. I stopped for a moment. Without turning, I responded, I forgave a long time ago, I just haven't forgotten. I got in the car, started the engine. The Ferrari roared like a lion waking up. The street was emptier now, and as I drove away, a sense of relief filled my chest. I had won, and I didn't need to prove it to anyone anymore. Behind me, I left the muffled sound of an interrupted feast, and a family forced to confront their own prejudices. In front of me, only the road, and peace. But the most surprising thing of all, I didn't feel pleasure in humiliating them. I felt relief in no longer needing to beg for belonging, because sometimes, the greatest act of self-love is walking away. After 2 years of silence and distance, with the dust of rejection already settled and the wounds finally healed, something unexpected began to burn inside me. A spark, small at first, but growing more and more alive. It wasn't anger. It wasn't a desire for revenge. It was something deeper, more serene, more mine. It was freedom. Yes, victory had a sweet taste, but it wasn't the roar of the red Ferrari when I turned the key. It wasn't the bank statement now displaying numbers I never dared to dream of. It wasn't the shocked look on my mother's face when she saw me for the first time in 2 years. The true victory was something else. It was the quiet morning in my new apartment, when I woke up without weight on my chest. It was the freedom to open the closet and choose what to wear without fear of seeming insufficient to anyone. It was the power to say no, without guilt. True victory was freedom. Freedom to be who I was, without having to mold myself to fit the shape my family had tried to force on me since I was a teenager. Freedom to live according to my own values. Freedom to know that I was no longer Tiffany trying to make it, but Tiffany Hayes, founder of an online empire built from scratch, with my own hands, my own mistakes, and my own scars. And it was while looking in the mirror on that cold December morning that this awareness fell over me like a warm blanket. I was finally proud of the woman I saw there. You did this, I whispered to myself. You did this without them. My reflection wasn't crying. It wasn't smiling. It simply existed. Whole, firm, and for the first time, without needing anyone's approval. But the journey to this moment wasn't a straight line. There were days when I questioned everything. Days when loneliness squeezed my chest like a too tight belt. Birthdays when my phone didn't ring. Holidays when I ate alone, away from the noise of family gatherings, laughing with an old movie just to pretend it didn't hurt so much. There was one night in particular, I remember it perfectly, when I almost called my sister. It was a rainy Friday. Sales had dropped. I had lost a big client due to a silly logistics mistake. I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by boxes and receipts, my forehead resting on my knees, and almost dialed. Just to hear a familiar voice, I thought. Just to feel like I still have someone. But something in me froze my finger. I remembered the last conversation with her, 2 years before, when I tried to explain my project, and she responded with that sweet, condescending tone. Tiffany, maybe it's time to accept that this working online thing isn't for you. Maybe you're just fooling yourself. That sentence hurt more than any absence, because it wasn't just skepticism, it was disbelief disguised as concern. It was a denial of my worth. So no, I didn't call. I turned off the phone. And in that forced silence, I learned one of the most important lessons of my life. Sometimes, what we call family are just people who share blood, not dreams, not respect, and certainly not true love. It was in that moment that I decided I would never again bend to fit in spaces that diminished me. And now, with everything I had achieved, looking at my life from a distance as if observing a framed picture, I understood. Distance was essential. It was like stepping out of a stuffy room and finally breathing fresh air. When you step away from the looks that diminish you, you begin to see yourself with your own eyes. And more importantly, you begin to hear yourself. I learned to listen to my silence, my thoughts, my fears, my intuitions. I learned that I didn't need outside voices telling me who I am, what I should wear, who I should associate with, how much I should earn to be considered successful. Because success, I learned, isn't a car. It's not a title. It's not a house in Malibu. Success to me is having breakfast calmly. It's turning off the phone at night without a guilty conscience. It's having peace with my own choices. Success is the freedom to say, not today. Or today, yes. Because you decide. I wished everyone knew this, especially those women who, like me, were taught to please, to mold themselves, to be good daughters, good wives, good girls. I wanted to say to each one of them, you owe nothing to anyone. You don't need to beg for respect from those who only offer crumbs. You don't need to prove your worth to people who are too blind to see. Maybe someone is listening to this now, feeling the same tightness I felt. The feeling of being the family's disappointment, the lost sheep, the one who didn't make it. But here's a truth. Being the black sheep is often just an elegant way of saying you had the courage to leave the flock. Victory isn't in being accepted. It's in accepting yourself. Today, I look back and thank God I wasn't invited to that year-end lunch, because that silence forced me to hear the only voice that truly matters. Mine. If I had stayed, if I had kept trying to fit in, trying to be liked, I probably would have lost myself. And that, my dear listener, is the worst kind of failure there is. Living a life that isn't yours. Trying to please people who will never applaud you. True victory is living free. and happy, without needing an audience. And it was with this thought that same night, sitting on my apartment's balcony, with a glass of red wine in my hand and my bare feet touching the cold ground, I looked up at the starry sky and said softly, I am at peace. And that is all I need. And it truly was. And you? What would you do in my place? After being discarded, ignored, ridiculed, after being looked at like I was the dead weight of the family, the mistake of the group, the one who didn't make it, would you have gone back? Would you have had the courage to enter that room, look into the eyes of those who doubted you, without lowering your head, without asking for permission? Or would you have let everything crumble, let the silence speak for you, just so that, one day, they would miss what they had dismissed? I confess, I almost gave up. And I don't say that with pride. I say it with truth. There were nights I cried on the living room floor, surrounded by bills, doubts, and fear. There were mornings I thought, what's the point in continuing if no one believes in me? But then I realized, no one was going to write my ending for me. If I was going to return, it would be with presence, with purpose, with weight. Not to shove anything in anyone's face, but to show that what they called weakness was actually my strength taking shape. Sometimes life puts us against the wall. And we have two options: swallow our pride or demand respect. Pretend nothing happened or say, yes, I remember, but I overcame. Go back the same, or come back so big they can't ignore you anymore. And I came back bigger. Because my greatest revenge wasn't the car, nor the money, nor the stunned looks. My revenge was to keep going. It was no longer needing them. It was looking in the mirror and finally recognizing myself. Now tell me, if it were you, what would you do? Would you accept the apologies with a forced smile? Would you demand your space back as if you needed their approval again? Or would you simply move on, knowing that those who knocked you down will never have the courage to lift you up? I really want to know your answer. Tell me in the comments. No filters, no fear of looking bitter or proud. This is a space for truth. And if this story spoke to you, if in some way it reminded you of a pain, an overcoming, a strength you thought you had lost, then leave a like. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories, and because a lot is coming. And hey, click on the video showing up here next. It's another story of a new beginning, of someone who was also discredited, but came back on top. I'm sure it'll give you chills. See you there.